Burley and Nedum Onuoha. We'll hear from them in just a little bit. But Stevie, I'll start with you. A 7-goal thriller, probably not what we expected from this game. Pretty good.
You didn't expect goals?
Well, I didn't expect a 4-3, no.
Well, no, I expected goals. This is a game that really didn't mean an awful lot to either side. Pep Guardiola's talking about the games between now and the Champions League final could be a chance for somebody to play themselves in. I mean, do you really think Ferran Torres, with 3 goals, has played his way into the Champions League starting line? I don't think so. I thought there was going to be goals in it, and I thought City were going to score. I didn't think they were going to lose 3, but you know what? At the end of the day, it was a good game to watch, but it really didn't mean a lot.
Yeah, Nedum, 8 changes for Manchester City from the 11 that we saw in that second leg against PSG in the Champions League semi-final. It tells you kind of what Pep was thinking about this match.
Yeah, 100%. I think the fact that the league is already tied up, it means you can throw players in there to see how they react. And as Stevie was saying there, Pep does say that it seems as if, he's looking at players to see if they'll make the Champions League final team. And realistically, they probably won't. But I think for some of the players out there, they have to take the opportunity, because if they do have a bad performance or they show the wrong attitude, then they probably play themselves out of contention altogether. So I think that's a big point in itself. But he made the changes, and it was a 4-3, which is very unlike City away from home this year, because I think to this point they probably conceded 9 away all season. But ultimately it was a good game for the neutral. It was a good game to watch, and even though there was nothing on the line, I suppose you'd rather see that than maybe a 0-0 or something like that.
Craig, what do you think? Do you think Pep's 11 for the Champions League final is set, or do you think a performance like what we saw today from Torres could play him into a role?
No, I think he's pretty much going to be set on the guys that he knows that can do the job for him. Look, you're always trying to encourage your players to go out and feel that they're playing for a place in the side. And listen, nobody wants colleagues to get injured or miss a game for whatever reason, but it could happen. And the one thing you've got to do is, if there's a couple of knocks or injuries or illness for Man City, to show that you could be the guy to come in if that is the case. So, yeah, you want to be professional about it. But I think most of the guys that play, and we've seen it already this season in the big games, know which way he's going to go. I suppose the one caveat to that is that Chelsea have beaten him twice recently, and that maybe altering his thinking a little bit in terms of who he selects, or maybe he's going to try and change something to try and alter that. But in terms of personnel, I don't think we'll see much of a change from the strong 11 that he selected in the big games.
Yeah, Pep said he wasn't going to rest players ahead of the Champions League final. Obviously, the lineup that we saw today suggests he will. What's the balance there from a manager's perspective between rest and keeping the guys are going to play in the Champions League final sharp?
Well, I think it's important that training's sharp. It's not obviously long, but it is quick, and players are into it, and you don't have them there too long. I think it's also important that team that you've got in your head, you've got to get them on the field. And I think we'll see that team the week before the final. I think that team will start against Everton. I think Brighton will be the same as what we saw against Newcastle. People will be left behind. It will be a reserve team, but you look at the team that's playing Everton, I would pretty much guarantee you that has to be the side that starts. Because you can't expect to not have your first team playing together for 3 or 4 weeks. Maybe not as long as that, but maybe 2-3 weeks. And then expect them just to go on the field and gel. You have to get them on the field together. That would be the game to do it.
Nedum, this is the first time that we've had you on since Manchester City clinched the title. You with your City ways. Look at this run from November 25th through the beginning of March. 28 games across all competitions, unbeaten. We forget this team got off to a terrible start this season. How do we explain what happened over these months?
To be honest, it was crazy. I think one thing that's this season shown to them, I think to people from the outside, is for Man City, they can find another way to win a league, because I think in years gone by, they've been front runners. They've been in the top 2 for most of the season, maybe going head to head with somebody. But this time they came from the middle of the pack, because the start of the season was so poor by their own standards. I think when they lost 5-2 at home to Leicester, people were writing them off. And in some ways, you could argue it was rightly so, because that was very, very unfamiliar for what City had been for the years gone by. but they found something, you know, whether it was a case of Pep basically changing his ideas, the players bucking up their own ideas. I think there's lots of talk about a meeting Fernandinho called amongst the players to say, you know, they have to do better. But from that point, for the majority, they literally were perfect. And the run that they went on, obviously at times there were things which went their way in terms of United and Liverpool falling off and so on, but they were literally perfect. And all you could hope to do was match it because you couldn't better it. So that time there, that's essentially what's helped them win the league. And it was incredible because in that time as well, I think they played some of the best football I've seen. And to add to that, through long periods, they didn't have Sergio Aguero playing or Kevin De Bruyne, but they were still absolutely exceptional. So they found a way in that time through the manager and through the players to be as good as the collective instead of the individuals. And ultimately, you know, I think they deserve the league title, and they've, as I say, they've shown a different way to do it because they haven't been front runners like we've seen before.
Sebi, I think Steve makes a good point. Just to go back a little bit, it's a difficult balancing act because obviously the league's over. If the league hadn't been over, it would have been much more simple. But as Stevie was saying, you just can't leave people out for 2, 3, 4 weeks and then pitch up at a Champions League final and say, you've had a rest, you're playing, because you lose that little bit of match sharpness. And so he is going to have to play the guys for sure, and that's a risk for injury, as I said. But you need to keep that sharpness. You don't want to overdo it, but you need to make sure that De Bruyne and Bernardo Silva and Phil Foden and all these guys, they've got their eye in. They're still up to speed. They're still sharp. They still had enough matches or enough time within the matches that they've got that match sharpness. That's the first thing that goes. If you're out, if you rest, or if you're out injured, when you come back and you train and then you go into games, it's that match sharpness. And so he'll have some decisions to make in terms of his team selection because, as Stevie rightly said, he'll want the guys to go in there off the back of some good performances and make sure they're firing all cylinders.